Today I would like to talk about three things: the goals of spiritual practice, the process of spiritual practice, and the attainment. Frankly speaking, people who think this world is a pleasure are not fit to engage in spiritual practice. That is because they have not yet reached the ultimate point. You might say that they are at the stage of the journey that will lead them to the beginning of spiritual practice, when they will experience suffering. To understand this, our true ego needs to learn the process of how it loses sight of its true form. The true ego, I guess you could say it's the authentic self, that which is our foundation. If the true ego connects with will and perceptions, it would be the soul. Perhaps this makes more sense to you. The true ego is influenced by the three gunas, the three kinds of energy that make up the universe, namely merit, vice, and action. Under the influence of the three guns, the true ego increasingly loses sight of its original appearance and falls into illusion. A person who has fallen into such illusions and is still only on the path that will lead him to spiritual practice believes, as I said earlier, that this world is a pleasure. He also believes that this world is absolute. When, however, in this process, one reaches the end, that is, the extreme point of this path, one begins to experience suffering. With painful acuity, he begins to feel the suffering that rebirth in this world brings, and all the meaninglessness of it. The true ego notices this only as a result of acquiring numerous experiences. Experience is the first step towards spiritual practice. Take, for example, the orange. Suppose a person who has never eaten an orange before eats it and thinks, "Ah, how delicious." Even if it does seem delicious the first time, try eating 5, 10, 20, or 30 oranges in one day. Try to keep doing that every day. Surely they will bore you, won't they? Likewise, in the course of any experience, sooner or later satiety is bound to come. So it is with love. Or with a position in society, with fame, the same thing. It is the same with money. The more intense the experience a person has in this world, the more of this experience he has, the faster he becomes satiated with this world. This happens because he can no longer satisfy his subconscious mind. And then he starts thinking, this world is full of suffering. This world is nothing more than an illusion. And he has a desire. I want to get out of this world. I want to get out of the world of suffering. He starts thinking about how to get out of this world of suffering. So he has the desire to free his soul through spiritual practice. This is the typical process by which one enters into spiritual practice. Get rid of your delusions. So he has the desire to free his soul. The next problem is to know the way to liberation. To free our soul, we have to understand that our soul and our physical body are separate things. Then we have to understand that our soul is different from the dream world or the astral world, another dimension world made up of 5 subtle elements. Finally, we need to realize that the soul is different from consciousness. There are 2 ways to become aware of this: the theoretical way of awareness and the experiential way. We need both. Awareness based on experience is liberation. Awareness through logic is enlightenment. How does one achieve enlightenment or liberation? This is something to think about. Let's imagine a foolish person and a wise person. Suppose the foolish man bought an orange. He tastes it and finds it tasty. The next day he buys 2 oranges, then 3 or 4 oranges, and eats them until he is satiated. The oranges bore him, ceasing to be tasty to him. Then he tries an apple. He eats apples until he tires of them too. Then he goes on to the bananas. The same thing happens with bananas. A person who does not learn anything by repeating this over and over again will take a long time to achieve enlightenment and liberation. And what will happen to a wise person? When he becomes satiated with oranges, he will wonder, why have I become satiated with oranges? Then he will probably think, now I feel like eating an apple, but perhaps I will get bored with apples, too. And then he will decide, I will try to look as objectively as possible at the changes that occur in my soul while I am eating apples. In this way, He will come to understand the changes that take place in his soul as he eats apple after apple. As a result, after tasting only oranges and apples, he will have a sufficient experience of satiety. Because of this experience of satiety, he does not move on to bananas. He doesn't need to. If you take cars instead of oranges and apples, it will be the same. I don't know much about cars, but let's take a Bluebird, a Skyline, and a Civic, for example. First, you drive the Bluebird. If you get bored with it, you get in the Skyline and then the Civic. It's the same process as going from oranges to apples and then to bananas. It is the same for members of the opposite sex. When the mind goes from girl A to girl B and then to girl C, it is the same. If we are aware of the movements of our soul in the case of oranges, we will not fall into delusion in the case of cars or persons of the opposite sex. This is when enlightenment comes naturally. You may be surprised that I suddenly used the word enlightenment. Perhaps it seems to you that orange, a car, and enlightenment are hardly compatible concepts. Enlightenment is the state in which you can objectively observe and understand the movements of the soul and how the true ego sinks into darkness. This is the process of enlightenment. Jnana yoga is necessary for enlightenment. It is also called the yoga of analysis or the yoga of philosophy. If you become enlightened, you can understand what you have to do now and what is the meaning of this human life. When that happens, you will lose interest in money. You will need some money, of course, but it will no longer have a significant impact on your life. For example, even if someone wears a $3,000 suit and you're only wearing a $10 sweatshirt or workout uniform, you won't care. Even if someone drives a fancy presidential car and you drive a $700,000 Familia, it won't be a big deal to you. If someone walks around with a beautiful girl, and the girl next to you is not so beautiful, it won't bother you. Because you will notice that there are many more important things. How to live every day a fulfilled life. How to live in search of absolute freedom, absolute happiness, and joy, what your true ego wants. Step by step you will focus your attention on these things, engage in spiritual practice, and move toward liberation. Those who are awakened to the truth are the ones who are liberated. Now I would like to address the following questions. I said that when one achieves enlightenment, one goes into spiritual practice and is directed toward liberation. This means that it is after one achieves enlightenment that real practice begins and that only such a person is capable of devoting himself fully to practice. An enlightened person will no longer fail in practice. For him, there is nothing but spiritual practice. And so he is truly capable of attaining liberation. This is why I pay so much attention to Jnana yoga. I would like you to achieve enlightenment as soon as possible with the help of Jnana yoga. Otherwise, if you encounter failure, you may stop practicing. So far, several of my students have failed. This is a fact. The most unpleasant incident happened in my absence when I went to India. We had a disciple. Let's call him R. He had been a disciple of Bhagavan Sri Rajneesh before. When he first came to me, his Kundalini, the cosmic energy that usually slumbers at the base of the spine, was already awakened. He was influenced by the teachings of his old teacher, no fixed ideas, i.e., no fixed ideas needed. But he had the fixed idea that no fixed ideas are necessary. To meet the conditions of being my disciple, one must engage in the practice of selfless service, a type of spiritual practice for the accumulation of merit, and meditative practice. He must also observe strict rules. Until then, there had been no problem related to sex, although men and women in the community lived together. However, R began to state, forbidding men and women to take a bath together, isn't that a fixed idea? I knew that if men and women who had not yet attained liberation took a bath together, they would suffer. That is why I forbade it. R abused the fixed idea of no fixed ideas. Using it, he wanted to satisfy his sexual desire. As a result, he dragged 2 other girls and 2 young men into it. Eventually, Two couples formed who made physical contact. In the end, only two of them returned to the right path. I excluded R and his partner, who were carried away by sensual desires, as well as another person, but for a different reason. Thus, even those engaged in spiritual practice can easily go astray if they have not attained enlightenment. As for those two who were involved in this story and returned to the path of truth, I think their return was only possible because of their strong faith in me. You also have not attained enlightenment and, hearing a story like this, you may begin to worry that you may fail similarly. Therefore, keep your faith in the Guru, the teacher who guides the student to the highest level of spiritual practice, and in God, the supreme God Shiva, the purest true ego, who is the Guru of all saviors. Have faith in me. If you have faith, I will always watch over you and be able to help you. I must tell you another terrible story. You achieve enlightenment through Jnana Yoga and then liberation through Kundalini Yoga, a level of yoga that uses Kundalini energy to experience the higher worlds. There is another reason why the practice of Jnana Yoga is necessary to achieve liberation. The fact is that you will go crazy practicing Kundalini Yoga if you cannot achieve enlightenment. I recently heard that a yoga instructor at an ashram went crazy and committed suicide. The Kundalini energy is so powerful. But if you achieved enlightenment through Jnana Yoga and you can use Kundalini energy in the right way, you don't go crazy. An undeniable advantage of Jnana Yoga is that it allows you to understand your condition and solve your problems. Let's say somebody is thinking, I'm suffering from illness, I'm troubled by financial difficulties, or I'm worried about problems in my personal life. I can tell them, with the help of Jnana Yoga, get health, financial stability, and a happy love marriage. Health, financial stability, and personal life are not directly affected by Jnana Yoga, but by Raja Yoga, a level of yoga that requires a strong will and allows one to see objects of higher worlds, and Kundalini Yoga. However, without the spiritual foundation created through Jnana Yoga, one will go in a direction that is unsuitable for the practitioner for worldly gain. And this will become karma, an accumulation of body, speech, and thought factors. The practice in our community is very effective. For example, if you can hold your breath, do kumbhaka, for 2 or 3 minutes using pranayama, a type of yogic breathing technique to control the life force, you will be free to control others and achieve whatever you want. So if you don't have the spiritual foundation that is created through Jnana Yoga, you can hurt yourself and create bad karma. What should we do? This world is only a temporary shelter. Take only the essentials and give the rest back. If you do this, not only will you be able to overcome your present suffering, but you will be able to go to a better world in your next life. Most importantly, you will be able to live your life in peace and tranquility. Let's move on to the process of liberation. Liberation is the process of physically getting rid of your attachments. For example, when you're hungry, in what part of your body do you feel hunger? You feel it in your stomach. Where do you feel sexual desire? You feel it in the Swasthana chakra. The chakras are the subtle centers that connect us to the higher worlds. Anger is the heat from the Muladhara chakra. Hunger, sexual desire, and anger can be classified as stress energies. Meanwhile, ordinary people have no outlet for these energies. That is, if they want to eat, they have to do it until they satisfy their hunger. When they feel sexual desire, they either have to lose their mental balance or give an outlet for their energies. The feeling of anger is completely out of control. That's the way normal people are. It's different if there's a special channel open for these stress energies. Such a channel, called sushumna, serves as a way to drain the energies of stress. For example, if you feel sexual desire and your sushumna channel is open, then this desire goes up through this channel to the top of your head. The same thing happens with feelings of hunger and anger. Do you understand? The first thing you should do is to open the sushumna channel, which runs along the spine. Then the rising energy pierces the Sahasrara chakra and causes the phenomenon of Sandali. As a consequence of Sandali, the rising energy begins to go down. This time it doesn't go through the same channel, but goes down the center line of the torso. Various divine powers and supernatural abilities are developed. Appetite, sexual desires, and anger begin to circulate. Thus, as soon as sexual desire arises, for example, its energy is transformed into Sandali energy. This is how we have a state in which we don't experience any stress. But that's not the only thing. Appetite, sexual desire, and anger generate different vibrations in our brains. These vibrations excite us and give us pleasure. We can always sink into a very pleasurable state. Without doing anything, we will always be able to be in a good mood. This is the state of liberation. As I said, we are born into this world because of our worldly destructive desires. Because of our passions and attachments, we cannot leave the wheel of reincarnation. If we are freed from worldly passions, we will never be reborn again in this world of suffering. We can go to the happy worlds of other, higher dimensions. This is liberation. So if we do theoretical research, we come to enlightenment. If we do research based on the physical experience, we come to liberation. If we can combine enlightenment and liberation, we come to the highest state. Let me add one more thing. This refers to the case where the Sahasrara chakra does not unfold in the process of liberation. What happens when that happens? It is terrible because the stress energies are just flowing from the lower level chakras to the higher level chakras. That's when, as I said, you can go crazy. For example, a person full of sexual desires will satisfy them in the astral world. A person full of anger will become combative in the astral world. I belong to that type. The lover of food and the ignorant will be asleep all the time. However, if your guru has attained perfection, he will help you to open the Sahasrara chakra, because he can control any dangerous state. As I said before, it is better to begin the process of liberation after attaining enlightenment. This is not a commercial project. For as many people as possible to come across this information, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment of 8 words or more.